Welcome to my conversation with Shimin Ooi. I'm really excited to dive into the topic of sleep. Sleep is one of those fundamental things that can help you cultivate that state of productiveness and improve your relationship with time. Shimin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, so nice to be here, Mike, and excited to talk about anything sleep and productivity.
So the first thing I want to kind of discuss is your rise at Sleep Reset, because we'll link to it. Obviously, Sleep Reset is the company and the program. There's so many things around it, but what led you to be so fascinated with this topic? Because it is such an important area, and we've seen more focus on it with books by like Ariana Huffington, for example, Daniel Pink looking at chronobiology, and of course Dr. Michael Bruce, who's been on the show multiple times, leaning into this area of sleep. So what drew your interest into this arena?
Yeah, so I struggled with sleep since I was a child, and it wasn't quite insomnia when I was a kid. So you might have heard of something called obstructive sleep apnea, which the most common misconception people have and is that it can only really affect people who are overweight, who are male, and are over 50 years old. That is not true because I'm not overweight, I'm not over 50, and I'm not a man. I actually had pediatric sleep apnea. And what that meant is that I was sleeping 9 to 10 hours every single night. I was taking naps during the day because I was just so tired all the time. And only until my late teenage years that my parents realized that I had this condition. And when I was able to fix my apnea, my life was truly like night and day. The amount of energy I had, the productivity I felt, the amount of sleep I could, I had to get after I was able to address my apnea was just so much more normal than what I had previously. And truly, like, it affects your mind. I remember the doctor that I had seen at that point in time was shocked that I had gone by with such interrupted sleep my entire childhood. So my own personal struggles with sleep really drove me to want to help others achieve truly restorative sleep.
One of the things that I remember watching a video a number of years ago. It's actually I really enjoyed the video because it was Casey Neistat, who some of you would know as a famous YouTuber. And he walked through his schedule. I think the video was called Fat and Lazy. And he talks about how little sleep I noticed that he got at that time. He would, and he mentioned in the video, and we'll link to it in the show notes of the episode, uh, that he replaced sleep with exercise. So
Mm.
in his mind, and again, remember, not a doctor, in his mind, or not an expert in the area, that if he that exercise would replace sleep. And I've seen other people talk about this where like I don't get enough sleep, but I feel that by exercising, I get some of us the similar benefits of it. Like my brain is sharper, so on and so forth. So I'd love to, like, is this an area that you can kind of talk a little bit about like where people try to either short circuit the amount of sleep that they get because they've got very, frenetic lives, and perhaps look at this idea of I can replace sleep with, a modicum of exercise or even meditation.
Yeah, that is an interesting thought, but the long story of it is that no, your exercise cannot replace sleep. So the way to think about it is both are crucial for health, but they actually serve fundamentally different biological functions that your body needs independently. So let's talk about why sleep is irreplaceable. Sleep actually performs essential processes that nothing else can achieve. So you might have already heard some of these, but firstly, when you sleep, there is brain maintenance that goes on. Your brain essentially clears out metabolic waste products, it consolidates your memories, it prunes unnecessary neural connections. The second thing that sleep does is that it allows physical restoration. It repairs your tissues, it synthesizes proteins, it releases growth hormones. And then, thirdly, there's immune function. You are able to produce and distribute infection fighting cells when you're sleeping. And that's actually why if you have just one single night of poor sleep actually hurts your immune function by almost 70%. And then lastly, it helps to regulate your metabolic function. So the hormones that control your appetite, your blood sugar, and your stress are all regulated during sleep. Exercise is very different. And actually, if you think about, those four different processes I just laid out, like just take physical restoration. You're actually not repairing tissues when you exercise. If anything, when you exercise, you're causing microscopic tears in your muscles to try to build up more muscle fiber, right?
Right.
It's they're completely different functions, and replacing sleep with exercise is I would not recommend that for anybody.
So one of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with is because there is so much demand on their attention. And it's interesting because I think that post COVID-19 pandemic, the world is speeding back up again. And I would imagine that we probably got more rest when things were slower. But now that we're ramping things back up, either by default or just design or even desire, to me, the idea that you have all these things to do or all these things to learn. I literally was just on a call before we hopped on, and at a mastermind call, and we were talking about AI. And AI is so prevalent right now that everyone's trying to learn and get an edge with it and all that stuff. These thoughts that race through people's heads, and they can't get fully rested. What are some of the things that people can do to kind of either put their mind more at ease so they can sleep, without doing the things that, like a magic pill, like a sleeping pill, or any of the, because I mean, CBD can help. Like there's certain things that I know that can help with this stuff, but I know that if you, like my kids, we used to give them melatonin, but then don't give them it's like you better not give them too much because that can have a problem too. So how do we avoid that short circuiting, but yet allow us to put our mind and our body at rest?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And that is something that CBT-I addresses. So, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is the gold standard treatment for insomnia. And that's a program that we have with Sleep Reset. But if you were to just, let's say you don't do the program, just some tips that you could start working on immediately. Essentially, one of the most critical things is you need to interrupt your thought spiral. So when your mind starts racing, you need to redirect it to something else that occupies just enough attention without being stimulating. So what that one of the there are a couple of strategies to do this.
Mhm.
One is you could do 4-7-8 breathing, which means you breathe in for 4 counts, you hold for 7 counts, and then you exhale for 8 counts. And the reason why this works is the counting gives your mind something to do without being stimulating. So it takes your mind away from all of the maybe anxiety and panic thoughts that you might have. Um, there are other sort of like mental strategies like body scanning meditation. So it's called, you know, muscle progression. As you scan your body from head to toe, you basically slowly focus on relaxing each part of your body, um, from head to toe, back from your toes to head. And that is also one way to kind of take your mind off, intrusive thoughts. There are also other things. So going away from this kind of like body scanning or breathing exercises, there are also mental exercises that you can do, which is do a brain dump. So 30 minutes before bed, literally write down every single thing on your mind for 10 minutes. All your tasks, all your worries, all your random thoughts, like get it all out. And if something like if thoughts about works or tasks or ideas keep you up, just like write it down and then tell yourself, I'll handle this tomorrow. And this actually helps your brain let it go versus like hold on to it. And what you actually want to do as well is you basically want to make your bedroom less stimulating. So you might have heard like, keep your devices out, like don't put your phone next to your bed, don't use your phone as alarm. I think these are all things that, people people think like, "Oh, there's no harm, right? If I use my phone as alarm, it's just right there." But it's very interesting that when you look at your brain psychology and the relationship with sleep, one of the reasons why people struggle and develop insomnia is your brain is a very powerful muscle, and it starts learning to mix boundaries with your bed and sleep. So if you're constantly like in bed, like using your phone or using your laptop or thinking anxious thoughts, the next time you're in bed, your brain actually thinks like, "Oh, this is the time that I should start worrying," or "This is the time that like, you know, I should be working because I'm always working when I'm in bed." And then after as time goes by, you suddenly have insomnia because or actually gradually have insomnia because your brain has learned all of these bad associations with sleep.
Yeah, one of the things that when I first started working from home, this is eons ago when we didn't have enough bedrooms for the kids uh, and me to have my own study, is I worked out of my bedroom. And I recognize that because everything's there. Like, it's not like you can take it out. And so I think that that was one of the things I think that happened during COVID-19 too, is that people had to use the space they had. And so the recommendation of like not doing it. And my bedroom's boring now, which is great. And my alarm actually, I'm at the point now where uh, I actually just wear a Fitbit at night,
Mm,
so I don't see it. Doesn't give me, and I think one of the things that gets missed in this conversation too is turning customizing your device so that those interruptions don't happen, right? So taking a bit of time, like this thing only does one thing for me. It tracks my steps and it has an alarm on it that's haptic, right? I could have
yep.
got an Apple Watch, but the problem with the Apple Watch is that there's so many other things it can do. And I didn't want to spend time customizing it. I didn't want the reminders to stand up. I didn't want all that. And so I think that another step people can take if they are hesitant, even though and the research is born like get tech out of the bedroom, all that stuff. If you need a middle path, like this is the closest I've gotten to a middle path that works for me. Otherwise, and this is actually related to the assessment that I did. So I went to the Sleep Reset website, and one of the things was the alarm. Do you snooze your alarm? Like, what does your alarm look like? Would you wake up naturally if you did not have an alarm? And as a night owl, I can, and I'm a heavy sleeper too. Uh, I would not wake up without an alarm. I would, especially if I have to get up earlier, which I do often, than I would like. Um, a lot of the people I work with live in the Eastern time zone. Where are you based, by the way, Shimin? Are you in the West Coast?
Yes, I'm in San Francisco.
So you and I are in the same time zone. But most of the people I deal with are in the Eastern time zone. So me being a
Mm,
night owl does not born well for me to have to, you know. So in instances where I have to be up early, like earlier than I'd like, that's what this is for.
mm,
But if I had my druthers, and I know when you go through the assessment, I'll get you to talk about it in a second. It's like what would the range be that you would get up at? What would the range be that you would go to bed at? So I want to talk about that because I think when we get to the strictness of sleep and the strictness of a sleep schedule, people get really myopic about it. Like, and I think that in some instances, that's fine. Athletes, I saw Victor Wembanyama recently say that after the All-Star game, he's a center for the San Antonio Spurs. They said, "How are you going to celebrate?" He goes, "I don't know. I'll probably go to bed an hour later than I usually do." Like, that's like, says he's like, athletes can be on a regimented schedule like that. Not everybody either wants to be or maybe needs to be. So why, when I'm taking the assessment, or why do you look at ranges rather than precision, overall precision? I'm just curious about that. Is that something that you get to when you're in the program that Sleep Reset offers, or is it more of a, hey, there's a bit of tolerance there?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a great question. So there is a bit of tolerance for time, but if someone is struggling with insomnia, generally, so what you one of the core pillars of CBTI is something called sleep compression. So for and the reason is that someone who struggles to fall asleep and then wakes up multiple times during the night, one of the core reasons is that your body's sleep drive is not strong enough, and this could be influenced by many things. So when you go to bed, your body doesn't have a very strong desire to go to bed. And then the second root cause is you have different associations with your bed and sleep, and as a result, you are um, waking up multiple times during the night. So when you temporarily compress your schedule, it allows your body to reignite its sleep drive and strengthen that, such that, hey, once you expand your sleep schedule back to a more normal number of hours, you're actually able to sleep better and more efficiently. Think about it, maybe the easiest way to think about it is like, if you are constantly eating throughout the day, you have, like, no desire for dinner when it's dinner time, right? Maybe that's why you tell your kids, like, "Don't snack during the day."
Hmm.
If you stop yourself from eating and snacking, it actually builds up more of a hunger for you to actually eat your meals when you're supposed to eat. So it's a very similar concept with your body, and that's why we have, times that we a schedule that we basically prescribe to people. I would say that it's less about the precision and more about understanding if your bedtime is meant to be 10 p.m. Are you taking 30 minutes to fall asleep, or are you taking 2 hours to fall asleep, or, are you taking 5 hours to fall asleep? Whether or not you fall asleep in, like, 5 minutes or 20 minutes, there's, like, less of a difference there. So there's less precision, but it's more of like, "Hey, are you actually struggling with, um, uh, a sleep latency problem where you can't fall asleep? Or are you struggling with, hey, you're waking up multiple times a night?" Those are very basically clear signs that you're struggling with sleep disorder.
I want to talk about naps. I love naps. Um,
Yeah.
and I think back to the earlier point I made about getting up earlier than I would like. Um, so naps are part of my regimen to a degree. There, and honestly, it's like meditation. I need to do it more, but I miss that from time to time. What are your thoughts on naps? Because I think that I remember having a conversation once, and I've shared this I think before on the podcast with somebody who has written about sleep, and um, the thing that they said was, I said, well, what do you think about naps? They're like, are you a baby? Only babies need naps. You know,
Mm.
you should get your sleep all in one fell swoop. And I thought that we were missing out on the nuance that might be occurring there, which we'll get to nuance in a follow up here. But I want to know what your thoughts are on naps, and if sleep reset kind of takes those into account. I know when I went through the program, when I went through the assessment, it's like, would you nap before? Would you nap after? So the language was there, but what I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So I would say that if you are if you're somebody who doesn't struggle with sleep, and it seems like you don't have sleep issues, you are a deep sleeper, you have no problems falling asleep or staying asleep.
Hmm.
Then I would say that, naps are not necessarily bad for you, and if you take a short nap, 10 to 20 minutes earlier in the day, it can actually boost alertness without affecting your sleep at night. So I don't know if that's the kind of napping you're doing. Also, if you're, in your case, it seems like you're sleep deprived, a nap can actually help you function better.
Yeah.
So the key is to kind of keep it brief and keep it early, so before 3 p.m. if you still wanna maintain a good night's sleep. That being said, if you are someone who's already experiencing sleep issues, so if you told me like, "Hey, I love napping. but I'm also struggling to sleep at night. Like, I can't fall asleep, and even if I fall asleep, I keep waking up, or I wake up at 3 AM and I can't go back to sleep. I would say that you need to stop napping. So, in this case, kind of related back to that sleep drive or sleep pressure,
Hmm.
basically, throughout the day, your body builds up sleep pressure, and that makes you feel tired at night. When you nap, you reduce that pressure, so it's the equivalent of, like, snacking throughout the day.
Hmm.
Um, if you nap too late in a day, like after 3 or 4 PM, similarly, you're basically relieving some of that sleep pressure, which means that you might not be able to fall asleep at night. And then lastly, sleep inertia, right? So if you're taking long naps, so over 20, 30 minutes, that could include deep sleep. And then, you might have had this experience before where you wake up, you feel groggy, you feel disoriented. It throws off your circadian rhythm. And, that also does affect your sleep architecture.
So Janet's asking, my Oura ring tells me I have a 10-hour sleep deficit. I'm a night owl and struggle to want to go to bed. So when that happens, what are your thoughts around that? Because that's interesting. I mean, I know I come across that sometimes where I'm like, because my brain is firing on all cylinders later in the evening, but I know darn well that I have something to do the next day, so I have to, and I journal at night. I think journaling is a huge benefit for me, and especially because it like you said, the brain dump. But for Janet, what are some of your thoughts around what she just shared?
Yeah, yeah. So you might have heard of, the different types of people. There's like morning larks and there's like owls, night owls, and there's people kind of in between. So that's a very basic sort of segmentation. Unfortunately, it is very normal for people to be a night owl. However, society is actually pretty much built for larks. Schools start early if you have kids. Your standard work hours are like 9 to 5. And then morning exercise and routines are generally glorified because, it gives you this energy boost and sets your, tone for the rest of the day. So it's it's sort of the unfortunate structure of society where owls are forced into a lark schedule, and as a result, you might have experienced this where you have, chronic sleep deprivation because you just can't fall asleep, and you should be falling asleep at that time to get sufficient hours. You probably have lower performance during, these early morning hours. Um, Unfortunately, like, I would say if you are an owl, and your work or your family life doesn't allow you to accommodate that, that's really tough. I think if you have a flexible working situation, try to negotiate like flexible hours, or try to schedule sort of more demanding work for your peak hours, which are like the afternoons and evenings.
Hmm.
Don't fight your weekend sleep schedule too hard. And if possible, which this is possible, but it really requires you to work on it, is use light exposure strategically. So expose yourself to sunlight right after you wake up, and that can help you shift your your owl schedule earlier, so more in line with what a normal schedule that society expects from you. So even if it's cloudy outside, just going out and exposing your eyes to sunlight, can help to basically reset your circadian rhythm and move you early on. The other thing that I wanted to say with sleep trackers, so Oura Ring, or other sleep trackers, is you might you might not realize this, but one of the there's actually quite a lot of research that sleep trackers are actually more detrimental for you, especially if you already struggle with sleep,
Mm,
because as Janet mentioned, her ring is telling her that she has a 10-hour sleep deficit.
yeah,
What that does in someone's psychology is that it actually makes you more anxious to sleep because it's told you, "Oh my gosh, you have a sleep deficit, you have to go to sleep." But then if sleep is not coming, it causes you to get even more panicked that you're not able to sleep.
it's a
So
spiral. Yeah, it's like the heart rate. When you see your heart rate on the front and you're like, why is my heart rate so fast? Why is my heart rate so fast? And like, well, now that's why it's so fast. It self perpetuates.
Exactly. So if you have, if you're using a sleep tracker and you're someone who obsesses about the data, which for what it's worth, like I love looking at data and my own data, but it actually can cause you to have sort of the wrong psychology about your sleep and make your sleep worse. So I used to use sleep trackers, several years ago, and I actually stopped using all of them because it was counterproductive for my sleep. Um, so if you sleep well, like, and you look at this, a tracker for other things, I would say go for it. But if you're looking at a sleep tracker and it's causing you to have anxiety and causing you to have worse sleep, I would say, it's probably better off that you don't use one.
Quickly around the idea of shifting one's circadian rhythm. Um, it seems to me like you're saying that that's a last resort, right? Like you really, I mean, I've long believed that, and I've talked to others that have felt the same way. I think Dr. Michael Bruce is a good example. He's a wolf, by the way. That's what I got when I went through the assessment. No
Yeah.
shock at all. The idea of uh, number one, and if I remember correctly, I think we discussed this, is even as we get older, wolves still will wake up earlier and go to bed earlier just because that's naturally what happens biologically. But you still won't be at your best early in the day. Like it's not a oh good I'm a lark or I'm diurnal or a bear or whatever you want to say. So are you saying like when it comes to the program, when it comes to the, because I got this when I was going through. In fact, I can look at it right now. It
Yeah.
basically said, like, hey, we're going to train you. We're going to, that's what
Yep.
Sleep Reset does. But it doesn't look like it's saying you must change here, become a morning person, because I don't think that like, so I want to just just talk about the nuance around that.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question. So you're exactly right. Sleep Reset's insomnia program is not meant to change your chronotype. There are people who are night owls, there are people who are larks. It's actually to deal with your insomnia issues. So you could imagine that someone who is a lark and should be going to bed, call it 9 p.m., and waking up at 6 a.m. because they are a lark, they might go to bed at 9 p.m., but still struggle to sleep at 9 p.m. or even
Hmm.
10 p.m. because they are struggling with insomnia. So the CBT-I program that Sleep Reset had built is meant to address those insomnia issues and not so much to change your chronotype. So you're exactly right there's a distinction there.
Here's a question: what's your chronotype? Where do you fall in?
Yeah, so I am naturally a lark, which, actually I do love being a lark, and I don't have an alarm. I've actually not had an alarm for years, and I naturally wake up between, like, 5 to 6 AM.
All right, all right. Lucky you. That's the way the world. So I've got
Yeah.
somebody in the YouTube saying I can generally fall asleep easier. A ski wheel on YouTube, except on the nights I know I have to get up earlier. This is interesting because this comes up in the assessment too. It's like I know I have to go to bed earlier and get a good sleep, but then I just don't, and I have problems sleeping. So, what's something that they can do in those instances? Because it doesn't sound like it happens. It's like when you have to get up early for a flight, right? You wouldn't normally have to leave that early, but oh my goodness, this is a different. So, how can someone deal with that?
Yeah, yeah, no, this is a great question, and it's one of the most common problems. So, the pressure to sleep well, so we talked about this pressure and anxiety before.
Hmm.
This pressure to sleep well actually prevents you from sleeping well. So, when you think, I must sleep well tonight, your brain actually interprets this as a threat, which then activates your stress response. And so, your, str- you, I mean, unless you measure this, but your hormones like cortisol, they actually rise, which then makes sleep impossible. So basically, what you've done when you've told your body, like, I have to go to bed earlier, I have to get a good sleep, is you've caused your brain to think that there's danger and it responds by keeping you alert.
Yeah.
Which is not at all what you want. So the counterintuitive solution is actually you should stop trying. Like, stop telling yourself, like, I know I have to go to bed earlier. I know I have to get good sleep. You should reframe the night. So tell yourself, it would be nice to sleep well, but if I don't, I'll be fine. And I've had a night of bad sleep before. One night of bad sleep it will not ruin tomorrow. And I've, functioned on less sleep before. So when you accept and reframe the night, it actually removes that pressure from your brain and just accept the worst case, give yourself permission to have a poor night of sleep. And that actually will help your brain fall asleep because it no longer is stressed out.
I wanna dive into coffee and caffeine a little bit. Okay. So you're a lark, so maybe I mean you this I when I get up in the morning, I come downstairs and I do get outside. I live in Victoria, Canada though, so it's like living in Seattle where like the sun might not be out in the winter months, but at least I'm getting outside. So there's a combination of that. Secondly, I've always made myself like a cup of coffee, right? Like I want that nice pour over. There's a ritual, there's the smell of it. And I've talked to, again, Dr. Bruce about this. I think he just posted a video with this because he was just on Diary of a CEO where he talked about like coffee first thing in the morning, like all the stuff that. So my question for you is, not to dispel what he said, but to ask if I went with decaffeinated coffee in the morning because of the smell and the scents around that. Yes, I'll still drink my water to kick things off because you're dehydrated and all that. But does the will I still benefit from like having a decaf cup in the morning to get that sensory stuff, and then later in like 90 minutes later going, okay, now it's time for the caffeine, like he discusses. I just like get your take on it, knowing based on your area of expertise.
Mm, it's interesting. So decaf, basically, coffee, tea, the main thing is caffeine, right? It's
Yes.
not just coffee or tea, it's like energy drinks, soda, chocolate, pre-workout supplements.
Hmm.
There are actually a lot of sources of caffeine. And truly, like, the guidelines are, caffeine has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours on average. What this means is that if you have coffee at 4 p.m., half of that coffee that or caffeine that you had consumed is still in your system at 10 p.m., and you need another 5 to 6 hours before it's fully flushed out of your system.
Gotcha.
Um, and the reason why caffeine is a big sleep disruptor is it blocks these adenosine receptors in your brain. And adenosine is a chemical that basically builds up throughout the day and makes you sleepy. So it's your body's natural, like, I'm tired signal. So if you take decaf coffee, there's still a little bit of caffeine, but it's like less than 10 milligrams of caffeine per cup compared to 100 to 200 milligrams in regular coffee. So that's about like 3% of the regular amount of caffeine in coffee. For most people, it's actually very negligible and it won't disrupt your sleep. But if you're extremely caffeine sensitive and you drink multiple cups of decaf throughout the day, it can still add up.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just
so
thinking off the top. I'm just thinking off the top. Like to get that, to me, it's almost the sensory aspect of I love the smell, I
mm,
love the ritual, and then because I don't drink a lot of caffeine in the day, but I don't want to necessarily drink that And I think the point is that uh, the caffeine's kind of wasted that earlier in that part of the day, in the early part of the day, right? Because you all those other things are still on the decline, so it's not you're kind of I think the way you pointed out was like you're basically wasting what the good effect of caffeine can have for you at that point in time. So that was something I like. So I was concerned that if it was decaf. So I'm glad you brought up that it's the caffeine. So if you have decaf coffee, it sounds like it's fine. Like, just don't
Yeah.
drink a ton of it like anything else because, that sort of thing.
Ex
I want to talk about the sleep calculator. Just for those that are watching on YouTube and LinkedIn, I'll put it into the chat. And again, why is age range important when it comes to calculating sleep? Because I've seen sleep calculators before. There's several of them out there, but this is the first one I think I've come across that hasn't had just the normal I want to wake up at, I want to go to bed, but also it's the age range that we're looking at. Why is that important to keep in mind?
Yeah, it's so age range is actually really critical for sleep calculations because your sleep needs and patterns change significantly throughout your life. So you might remember when your kids were newborns, obviously they could not function on 7 hours of sleep. I mean, you might have wished that they functioned on that little but they were getting like 14 to 17 hours of sleep. And then when your kids were in school, they need 9 to 11 hours of sleep because they're still growing. And, teenagers, adults, and then older adults who are 65 plus. So your sleep architecture actually changes throughout your life. And that is why, knowing your age is actually quite important for figuring out how much sleep you would need.
So before we wrap up, let's talk a little bit about what sleep reset can do. So for somebody, and we talked about CBT-I, which is for those that aren't, cognitive behavioral therapy is the core element of that. We've actually had guests on the show that's talked about CBT as well, which is great. And I have used some CBT practices for lowering anxiety and trying to. Journaling's been the biggest help for me before bed, to be honest. But in bed, I've noticed that sometimes I've had to use. You mentioned the breathing exercise and such, so I encourage you to, if you missed that part of the episode, go back and listen to it. But what are some of the things that that Sleep Reset offers, resources, assessments that can help people who are really concerned about their sleep hygiene?
Yeah. So, um, in essence, Sleep Reset is a sleep clinic that diagnoses whether you have insomnia or sleep apnea or both, and then matches you to the right care approach. So, if you have insomnia, as I had mentioned, we have our own proprietary CBTI program. And what is unique about our CBTI program is that I truly think it's the best program in the market, and it connects you with one-on-one with your own sleep coach, and also uses technology to really personalize your curriculum and your schedule. So talk about the sleep compression schedule that we've mentioned before. Every 5, like, sleep log, so 5 nights of sleep, you actually get a new schedule that then helps you adjust your sleep such that you're finally able to sleep better and sleep through the night. So this is something that is quite unique about our program, and very, very effective for people who are struggling with insomnia. If you struggle with sleep apnea, which is a condition I used to struggle for, the first step is to take a home sleep apnea test. So this is a little device. It's a that you wear on your hand, and you wear it through a single night of sleep. And based on that, it measures how many times you stop breathing through the night. Because basically, sleep obstructive sleep apnea or central sleep apnea means that you've paused your breathing during the night. And if you pause it many times, the way to think about it is the reason why you're so tired if you have sleep apnea is because you keep waking up during the night because your brain has stopped getting oxygen to it.
Mm.
So this device is able to tell you, do you have sleep apnea and how severe is it? Is it mild, moderate, or severe? And then depending on your condition, we're able to help you get treated. Whether it's, hey, you need to get an oral appliance, which is a device that, helps to open up your airways, or do you need to use a CPAP or BiPAP machine, which is a device that basically pumps pure oxygen into your lungs so that your brain gets the oxygen it needs throughout the night.
As we wrap up, Shimin, I want to thank you for being on the program. Where can people keep up with Sleep Reset and what you've got going on as well? Where can they learn more?
Yeah, I mean, visit our website, which is thesleepreset.com, and, check out information about what we do. And also, we're always putting out new content on our blog, as well as, yeah, just various parts of our website where we talk about our program, what to do if you suspect you have sleep apnea, and what you do if you have sleep apnea. So, and also, if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us at help@thesleepreset.com.
Thanks so much for having a productive conversation with me today, Shimin.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, Mike.